Hotep, it's your brother Beniti Amun Ray, back with another class, and what I want to discuss on this particular class is something I get a lot of emails about. Um, a topic that people have asked me to go into a little bit more in depth, and we're going to talk about astral projection. Exactly what that is, how that works. The ability to practice astral projection, whether it is voluntarily and it happens involuntary, and we're going to talk about that too. Because when the biorhythms of the body, or you're vibrating at a certain frequency and vibration, it can happen at will or involuntarily when you're not expecting it. This is one of the key components to understanding the mysteries of life, breaking down the time barrier so one can travel the various spiritual realms in the multiverses. It connects you with the realm of not just your genetic ancestral beings, but it links you up with all the various archetype energies, or what we would call deities. This is a practice where one can start perceiving things outside of person, place, or thing. When you leave that three-dimensional existence that's confined by everything that's categorized by person, place, or thing, consciousness takes on a whole different form. The level of that consciousness and the effect that it has on the subconscious mind and the psychic body and the psyche in general is tremendous. And this would be one of the aspects, or one of the practices, when you hear me constantly say you need to live the experience and not just read about it. So let's get into a little astral projection. Okay. Normal everyday waking consciousness is anchored to the physical brain and the nervous system. In this state, the body is thought of as I, an I which can only be aware of the world through its physical senses and can only think about it from its own head. It is the only state of which most people are aware, and in practice the only one in which they believe. Even those who believe in an immortal soul usually accept that for the duration of their earthly lives. Their consciousness is inseparable from the body. Dreams are envisions of the brain's functioning when the flow of sense data is cut off and the imagination fills the resulting vacuum with fantasies. These fantasies may be conceded to be psychologically meaningful and of therapeutic value, but they are still regarded as activities of the physical brain from which the eye cannot escape. Occultists and serious students of the paranormal look at the situation rather differently, and their attitude is borne out by formidable evidence. In one regards a human being as the multi-level entity, which we describe as reincarnation, then one sees the brain complex and marvelous though it is merely one mechanism of the multi-level phenomenon of awareness. Okay? Both conscious and unconscious. So let's stop there for a minute. One has to understand, and I've mentioned this before in previous classes. One has to understand how the superconscious mind works, the subconscious mind, and the conscious mind. The superconscious mind is constantly receiving messages from the subconscious, and the subconscious mind obviously is fed by the conscious mind. But sometimes we're not tapping into that middle point that anchors it all, the subconscious mind, and we're not really paying attention to the messages that are being sent there. And it can be misleading because sometimes we can misinterpret information. What this is talking about here, the conscious and the unconscious, they're connected but yet separate. I know that sounds a little bit crazy. Just like what we call the spirit realm or in the physical realm, for lack of a better word, to show there's a connection in those states of consciousness. For an example, if somebody per se would have what they call a nightmare or a bad dream, sometimes from that experience you might wake up sweating, or have other physical effects from the dream. Some people have even woken up with marks on their legs, bruises, because they might have dreamed something and the effect of what happened in that dream manifested. But the very fact that you experience, for an example, if you woke up perspiring, very the fact that that physical reaction was connected to what you were dreaming about in what we call a unconscious state or a dream state, where your body reached a certain biorhythm and you went into a state of sleep or slumber. And this is how one can involuntarily, which we'll talk about in a little bit, can involuntarily start, and make the transition to the spirit realm, for lack of a better word, and start to astrally travel. So there's a connection there. And what people have to understand is this: we got to get out of this illusion that when we talk about the various astral planes, remember they're all interwoven around you. You can once you're able to raise your vibration and frequency, you're able to penetrate those realms. They're not like as you see in diagrams and depictions when they show the chakras and the various spirit realms, as if they're laid upon each other. That still creates the illusion of a heaven and a hell. That's not, when we talk about the spirit realm, we got to get out of that fictitious illusion as if we're looking up, because subliminally that still creates the mindset that there's a heaven, whether you're conscious of it or not. And when you talk about, again, the term I'm using so people can relate to, the spirit world or the spirit realm, these planes are all interwoven around you, and how you penetrate them or access them or able to walk through them is by simply raising your vibration and frequency. So these planes are always around you or interwoven around you. You just have to learn how to access them. Okay. Excuse me. All right, then it goes on to say, it is the mechanism by which, via the etheric body, the physical body interacts with other levels, and also the mechanism by which the physical body regulates and balances its own functions. It is like a very modern house's wiring: radio, television, telephone, central heating, thermostats. But the occupant of the house is not a prisoner. He can walk out of the front door, meet people instead of phoning them, attend concerts, football games, etc., instead of watching them on TV, and know that although the house is temporarily unanimated by his presence, when he does return, it will have kept itself at the right temperature. All right, now what this is talking about, saying it's using the metaphor, you're not limited to your physical body. It's the same thing, it's referring to this house metaphor. Even though you are here in your physical body, you have incarnated in physical form in your physical body, doesn't mean you're confined to it. Doesn't mean you cannot leave it voluntarily or involuntarily and return to the condition that you left it. So we have to get out of our mind that we're limited to this physical existence. That a lot of us get stuck thinking that this is what we're trapped in, that we can't attain higher states of consciousness outside of this. That's the biggest lie. All right. Then it goes on to say, it is the same with human consciousness. While it is reasonable and convenient to spend most of one's time at home centered on the physical body and brain and communicating with the world through its wiring, its aerials, and its windows, one does not have to limit oneself to staying there all the time. The technique of shifting consciousness from the physical body and plane to the astral body and plane, this is what is known as astral projection. It can be learned or it can happen involuntary. Involuntary astral projection, let's talk about that first, really. Usually described as an out-of-body experience. I hear this, various times over the years from various different people. It is more frequent and widespread than is generally realized, partly because those who experience it are either frightened by it or reluctant to talk about it in case their sanity or truthfulness is questioned. Typically, the person suddenly finds himself or herself seeming to stand or hover in the corner of the room, looking down at his or her physical body from several feet away, with complete visual and often auditory awareness. The immediate reaction may be curiosity or panic. If it is the latter, consciousness will usually return to the physical body with an unpleasant jerk. All right. I know we've all experienced this, and I've experienced this constantly, and I can remember the first times, and I know there's people who have had similar experiences, when you have that out-of-body experience. Some even call it sleep paralysis. Sometimes you feel like, and this is what we're talking about, if it happens involuntarily, you feel like something is pressing down on you in the bed and you can't get up physically. And what starts to happen is you can feel yourself separating from your body, and then you actually, as you exit outside your body, as it says here, you have complete auditory and visual senses. Though you are viewing yourself and you're outside of your body, you might be looking down upon yourself on the bed. You don't necessarily, you're seeing, but it doesn't feel like you're seeing through the eyes of a physical body, which is confirmation now that you have now left the physical body and you are now vibrating on a higher level, or at a higher density level. You've left the lower density planes and you are now astrally traveling. Some people, as it said here, do resist it and they do panic. And what happens is when you panic and that adrenaline kicks in, you'll shift back into your body. And some of us have experienced that where we'll herk and we'll jerk while this is happening through a dream state. One of the key components, and it's tough, is learning to discipline yourself and control your emotions, and kind of go with the experience. That's the tough part. Once you learn to do that, you will see that the spirit world is opening up to you and wants to impede upon you its consciousness. And you don't know where they want to take you or where they want to travel or what messages they want to reveal. But this is one of the most powerful tools when dealing with spiritualities or things we've been talking about over the last several weeks, creating your own spiritual path. So the involuntary astral projection can be frightening to some at first because the way that it feels on the physical body when one starts to make the transition from that physical state to that astral state. And like I say, I can describe it from my own experience. I remember sometimes trying to wake up out of it, and it was like the biggest struggle or fight just to open one eye, and you had to fight to open one eye. It's like you were trying to wake up, but you couldn't wake up. And usually that's when you're at a state where you're actually in the middle of the transition, and you might, again, because of that fear, that emotion, that adrenaline that kicks in, you might startle the process. And as it says, you're in that process now of shifting back into your body. But I can remember that feeling. I could also remember sometimes when it happens, you start to feel like a humming vibrational sound through your entire body. It kind of almost feels a little bit on a very mild level as if when your foot falls asleep. That tingly sensation, it's the best way I can describe it. But you kind of feel that all through your body. And that, again, that's how you know you're starting to vibrate at the correct frequency, because when you're penetrating those astral realms, the biorhythms of the body and the frequencies are all in sequence and unison. And once they start working like a well-oiled machine, you're going to see things just start to open up. Now, at the same token, when you're doing that, you're also breaking the false illusion on this physical realm called time. And as I've said before, time is the biggest factor that keeps people ignorant to the reality of life's existence, traveling the spiritual realm, and opening up your consciousness to higher levels or higher states of consciousness. When you break the time barrier and most people's arguments, whether it's historical and even on a scientific level, people are always trying to define the first, as I've said before, the oldest. And really, when you deal with existence, you can't really put no time frame on existence. Especially melanated people, you can't put no time frame on the existence of a melanated being, because melanin has been here since the very, very, very core and fabric, or beginnings, as people say. It's the glue to the existence of not just our universe, but all the multiverses, all the universes and galaxies. Um, you'll find that this is the key component to life in general. And the reason why I bring up, and I'm referring to the neuromelanin, is because, as I've said before, the neuromelanin is that conductor. It receives those impulses, it receives those messages, and not only does it receive those messages, it also sends those messages back out. It's constantly sending signals, and this is kind of what your antenna is, or your magnet is, to attract those higher states of consciousness. So one has to find the ability to tap into that skill and work with it. And once you're able to do that, and like I said, breaking the misconception and the illusion, of time. Now you're not confined, or you're not limited to anything, and that's the key to really understanding what this is all about. Again, transcending person, place, or thing. And like I've said before, we got too many people nowadays and who claim to be conscious, or in the conscious community, or dealing with consciousness, that just argue over the most ridiculous stuff. Want to debate again who was first, and get into this whole right and wrong thing, but they're not seeing the bigger picture. At the end of the day, as I've said before, all that shit is irrelevant. You can dialogue, but I'm not going to go to the point, because this shit is irrelevant to me. I couldn't care. We know what civilization was first, period, regardless. We know which people were here first, regardless, and that's enough for us to know. Okay, when we start getting in detail and we start arguing over what tribe or what culture, or to me, that's fucking redundant. Because again, at the end of the day, it really holds no weight, other than you're just presenting an argument. But this is the bullshit people argue over and fuss, fight, and debate. But then they're not seeing the overall bigger picture. Okay, let's continue on. All right. Such projection, we're talking about involuntary now, can happen when the physical body is very relaxed. This is how it happens, particularly in the bath, where it is halfway to weightlessness. It can happen too. So if you are taking a spiritual bath and you're relaxing in the tub, that's actually happened to myself before too. It can happen too when the physical body is weakened by illness. The projection of the astral body deals with such a case. The physically frail, mundane, can also experience this. Some of the best recorded instances of involuntary projection have been recounted by patients who have recovered from clinical death. Often standing to one side in the operating theater or the hospital ward, they have watched and listened while doctors and nurses fought to revive their bodies. That would be likened to another out-of-body experience. And I've heard and I've talked to people over the years that have actually experienced that. In the case, I had a friend who went in for surgery, and when he was put up under anesthesia, he described a similar experience of that. He experienced leaving his body and seeing the whole process taking place as it was happening. Okay. Let's talk about now how it kind of happens involuntarily. Okay. let's talk about. You've heard me talk about before the silver cord, okay? Because once that silver cord disconnects, some call it the ether cord, you're able to now start traveling. That's the key. All right. How does one acquire voluntary astral projection? But this becomes a little more in depth. Okay. All right. One matter which there does not appear to be general agreement, is the silver cord. Many people over the centuries have insisted that a silver cord is seen and infinitely extendable between the astral and the physical bodies during projection, and that this cord is only severed on physical death. It is said to refer to this, excuse me, or ever the silver cord be loosed, or the golden bowl be broken, or the pitcher be broken in the fountain, or the wheel be broken as the cistern, then shall the dust return to the earth as it was, and the spirit shall return to the Creator who gave it, if such a cord does exist. And some experienced projectors have never seen it. It would presumably be the vital etheric link between the physical and the astral, and whether one sees it would depend on which wavelength of the broad astral spectrum one's projection faculty naturally utilized. We have very briefly outlined the nature of the experience. How does one learn to bring it about deliberately and under one's own control? This is the key. First, we would emphasize again that we have just said that the astral spectrum is very broad. Okay. Some occult traditions divide the astral plane into 7 subplanes. Let's talk about this for a little bit. But even these must be regarded as merging into each other. And that's what I was talking about earlier, how they're interwoven. Okay. At one end of the spectrum, the phenomena of the astral plane correspond very closely to those of the physical plane. And that's what I was saying in the beginning. It's a very thin line, that connection between the physical and the astral. And when that transition happens, it's such a gradual transition, because they're so closely linked together. Okay. All right. Everything is in the visible world is now. Excuse me. Sorry. Is surrounded and permeated by its astral counterpart. It is the world of astral counterparts. For example, when you could see and hear exactly what was happening on the physical plane, this end of the astral spectrum is the one to be mastered if one wishes to observe events on the physical plane, which are not directly available to one's physical senses. All right. Here's a description of astral projection and how she did it. Dion Fortune, who is author on many occult and magical books, here's her explanation on it. I made the astral projection by the usual method. That is to say, I pictured myself as standing 6 feet in front of myself, and then transferred my consciousness to the simulacrum that thus created my imagination and looked at the room through its eyes. Then I visualized the face of the man with the graying red hair and imagined myself speaking to him. The magic worked. I had the sensation of the descent of a swift lift, which always characterizes the change of the level of consciousness. All awareness of my physical surroundings faded, and I seemed to be in a strange room, which she proceeds to describe in detail. Okay? So she has a visualization technique. As she says, she visualizes herself a certain amount of feet from the body and visualizes certain things and gets her mind in a certain state and the body in a certain biorhythm, and then the shift in consciousness, as she explained, happened. And there's a multitude of ways that one can bring it about, but the body has to be, again, in prepared in its correct state, which visualization, meditation, concentration exercises, but definitely you have to get the body and the mind in a calm state and vibrating at a very, very peaceful frequency. the mind really needs to be clear of all thoughts when one is doing this. When one is distracted or one is constantly mind is being interrupted with thoughts, you'll find that you won't be able to achieve it. It becomes very difficult. So one definitely, what I mean by getting themselves prepared, one would definitely have to be in the right state of mind before attempting it. So you would want to go into it where the body and the mind is calm, and the mind is not going to be interrupted with an influx of a multitude of thoughts. Because what tends to happen is when people meditate or try to get into certain states of consciousness, the mind starts to wander, it starts to kick in, it starts thinking about crazy shit. And some people have a hard time trying to discipline that. You have to be able to do that, okay? Let's finish up with this part. For most people acquiring the technique, it is a long, hard process requiring great perseverance and a refusal to be discouraged. Is this going to happen on the first time you do it? It may not. It may not happen on the second, third, fourth, or fifth time. But it's saying here, again, don't get frustrated. It's just something you need to discipline yourself at and be patient and work with it, okay? At the other extreme, there are people who have what is generally called a loose astral body who acquire it all too easily and may have to develop control to prevent it happening spontaneously at the wrong moment. And that's a fact on all levels, not just dealing with astral projection. Some people just, spiritually, they're naturally more in tune and more linked in, whether they're conscious of it or not. A lot of that has to do with genetics and their DNA. And sometimes that's a spiritual gift inherited from the ancestors or a specific ancestor. So some people just have that ability, as it says here, to do it at will. Okay? How best to approach the problem may vary from person to person. A favorite method is the use of a full-length mirror. Here's a good technique here. You relax in a chair facing the mirror in such a way that your physical body would remain in position and come to no harm if it lost consciousness, which after all is the object of the exercise, and your mirror image as the simulacrum, willing your consciousness to enter into it. Okay? Here's another method, is to walk around your room, learning its visual details by heart. Then you relax in your chair or lying down with your eyes shut and make a mental tour of the room, visualizing and describing to yourself as accurately as you can, coupled with a strong desire to transfer consciousness to the simulacrum, which is making the tour. Okay? So you have a multitude of methods where one can visualize and try to obtain this. But it definitely takes patience. Now there's different levels to this. Okay? There's different levels of traveling. When one is astrally traveling, say through a dream state, you should definitely keep notes and records of that. One thing you can also do to enhance your astral projection, if you have a sacred space or a spot where you meditate, etc. I've always tell people, before you go to bed, you can petition the cosmic and ask to be opened up to that experience, to be opened up to the astral realm, so you can travel by way of your dreams. And sometimes the messages that are communicated can't even be put into perspective. So there's things you can do to enhance it, and kind of leave that involuntary aspect of it and voluntarily bring it on. You heard a couple of the exercises that I just read. Other methods that people use in enhancing this visualization. The mirror is a powerful tool, because when you do any type of meditation or visualization, and most occultists or ritualists, when they're at their altar and they're doing this type of spiritual work, a mirror, as I've always said before, is the doorway to other realms. And when you're doing just concentration exercise, and you're focusing on your face, and then you start focusing on certain aspects of your face, your eyes, your nose, you start to stare, and the vibrational frequency picks up. when you concentrate so hard enough, you definitely feel the separation. You'll separate out of your body. You'll see yourself in the mirror, but you will be out of your body, standing next to yourself, looking at yourself in the mirror. I've done that a multitude of times, and the feeling of it, you just know. You feel that, man. I can't again. It's hard to describe it in physical words, but you feel that separation happen when it hasn't happened. So the mirror ritual is very effective. If you've never tried that, try it. I found it very effective. Now, what builds it up and leads up to that is a good thing to do. You can just practice concentration exercises first by focusing on uh, your face in the mirror in certain portions of your face, because you'll start to see, obviously your face will start to change because of the vibration and the frequency when you're zoned in and you're locked in. But when you start mastering the concentration aspects of it, you'll see, if you do those techniques consistently, then it'll just happen at will when you want it. So that's key. But anyway, that's just some of the basics on that astral projection. So I kind of just wanted to go over that. It's one of the key components or tools in spirituality and creating your own spiritual path. So again, these topics come up, and this is why I've been focusing on a lot of these things the last several weeks. When people always ask me, well, how do I create my own spiritual path? What is it I need to do, and how do I go about doing it? Well, here's a multitude of techniques that you can do, and that I've been given over the last several weeks, where one can utilize these techniques to start creating their own spiritual path. And again, once you start experiencing these things and you open yourself up to the universe and you become receptive, man, let me tell you something, man, sky's the limit. There's nothing that could hold you back. And this is what they fear. This is what they don't want you to know. This is what they don't want you to practice. They still want you being mentally dead and congregating at the churches and the masjids and the temples and worshiping a spook fictitious god that doesn't even exist. That they couldn't care less if you did that, because that's their plan. That's what they want you to do. But when you take control of your destiny, and I wanted to find this, and we talked about this on the show this past Thursday night. A good explanation of what real magic is conquering one's self. That's what real magic is. And I want to say that again if you missed it. Conquering one's self. And a quote that Buddha said, it is better for one to conquer themselves than to conquer an army of 10,000 men. That's a powerful statement. So that's your goal as a magician, is to conquer the self. To master everything about yourself on all levels, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. That's the definition of what real magic is and what a real magician practices and what their purpose and intent for practicing that magical working is. That's your explanation. So I hope this information helped. Before I go, this Thursday on our show, Awakening Universal Minds, it'll be this Thursday. I believe that's the 11th, if I'm not mistaken. Should be the 11th. This upcoming Thursday, we're going to have Brother Panic returning to Awakening Universal Minds. He'll be doing a show this Thursday night. And I do have the date for the lecture that I will be doing at Sophia's Garden of Ma'at in Miami Gardens, Florida. That'll be Saturday, February 20th, 7:30 p.m. Mission is free, no charge. We just ask you to come and support, buy some books, support the Sister Sophia on some of the products and the food that she serves at the event. So we just ask you to support, make a donation, etc. when you come out. But there's no charge to get in, as you all that know me. So the information is free. So if you're able to come out there, definitely come out there. If you need information on that event, as far as more information or directions, etc., you can email me at khnum19@gmail.com. If you are interested in spiritual consultation, you can also contact me there at khnum19@gmail.com. khnum19@gmail.com. So again, I hope this brief lesson on astral projection shed some clarity on what it is, how it works, and how one can apply it to creating their own spiritual path, and hopefully throughout the last few weeks and the upcoming weeks, hopefully I'm giving you some practical tools that you can experiment and utilize on your own. Now the objective and the goal is not to just listen to this. The objective and the goal now is, now that you have an idea, create your own method to obtaining these goals, because that is the ultimate success one can have, is creating their own personal spiritual path. So that's all I got for you this week. This is your brother Beniti Amon Ray, aka Brother Michael, checking out, and we'll see you on the next post.